Imagine a city, not just built of mud, brick, and stone, but constructed from ideas and ambition. This was Baghdad in its golden age. Founded in the 8th century by the Abbasid Caliph al-Mansur, it was designed to be the very center of the world. Its official name was Madinat al-Salam, the City of Peace, a name that reflected its purpose. It was a perfectly round city, a marvel of urban planning, with the Caliph's magnificent palace and the Grand Mosque at its heart. 4 grand gates opened in the direction of the 4 corners of the empire, welcoming travelers, traders, and thinkers from every known land. The city was a bustling metropolis, a vibrant hub of commerce and culture, sitting strategically on the banks of the mighty Tigris River. The streets of Baghdad were alive with energy and possibility. Markets, known as souks, overflowed with exotic goods from far-flung places like China, India, Africa, and Europe. You could find fragrant spices, brilliant silks, intricate carpets, and precious metals. But the city's greatest treasures were not material goods. They were the ideas that flowed as freely as the water in its many canals and fountains. The Abbasid caliphs were not just powerful rulers, they were passionate patrons of learning. They understood that a great empire was built not only on military strength, but also on intellectual power. They poured immense resources into making their capital the most intellectually vibrant city on earth, a place where knowledge was more valuable than gold. This dedication to learning created a unique atmosphere in Baghdad. It was a city where poets were celebrities, where astronomers were revered, and where philosophers debated the greatest questions of existence in public gardens and private salons. Libraries were everywhere, not just the grand state-sponsored ones, but also smaller, private collections in the homes of wealthy merchants and officials. Bookshops lined the streets, their shelves filled with beautifully bound volumes on every imaginable subject. The profession of the scribe and the bookbinder was a highly respected one, for they were the guardians and distributors of this new wealth of knowledge, carefully copying and preserving texts for future generations to study and admire. What made Baghdad so special during this period, from roughly the 8th to the 13th centuries, was its incredible spirit of openness and curiosity. The city was a magnet for the brightest minds, regardless of their faith, ethnicity, or background. Muslims, Christians, Jews, and even those who followed other beliefs all lived and worked together. They were united by a shared passion, the pursuit of knowledge. This was a society that believed that wisdom was a universal treasure and that it could be found anywhere, whether in an ancient Greek manuscript, a Sanskrit mathematical treatise, or a Persian poem. This belief would lead to the creation of one of the most remarkable institutions in the history of science and learning, the House of Wisdom. At the very heart of Baghdad's intellectual explosion stood a legendary institution, the Beit al-Hikmah, or the House of Wisdom. Its origins were modest, beginning as a private library for the Caliph Harun al-Rashid, a ruler famous from the tales of 1001 Nights. He collected important manuscripts, particularly from Persia, and stored them in a dedicated wing of his palace. However, it was his son, the Caliph al-Mamun, who transformed this private collection into something truly revolutionary. Al-Mamun was a man driven by an insatiable intellectual curiosity and a deep respect for rational thought. He dreamed of an academy that would rival and even surpass the ancient Library of Alexandria. Under Al-Mamun's visionary leadership in the early 9th century, the House of Wisdom grew into a sprawling complex. It was far more than just a library. It became the largest repository of books in the world at the time, but it was also a bustling translation bureau, a research center, a university, and an observatory all rolled into one. The Caliph actively sought out manuscripts from across the known world. He sent emissaries to the Byzantine Empire, to India, and to other lands with a single mission: to acquire books on every subject, from medicine and mathematics to philosophy and alchemy. These precious texts were brought back to Baghdad to be studied, translated, and built upon. Who worked in this incredible place? The House of Wisdom was staffed by some of the greatest scholars of the age. They were astronomers, mathematicians, doctors, chemists, philosophers, and translators, drawn to Baghdad by the promise of intellectual freedom and generous state funding. The Caliph al-Mamun paid his scholars handsomely, sometimes rewarding them with the weight of their translated books in pure gold. This created a powerful incentive for them to produce accurate and elegant translations of the world's most important scientific and philosophical works. The institution was a true meritocracy, where talent and intellect were the only currencies that mattered, not one's origin or religious belief. The daily life inside the House of Wisdom must have been a constant buzz of intellectual activity. Imagine scholars hunched over desks, carefully translating ancient Greek texts from Aristotle and Euclid into Arabic. Picture astronomers in the adjoining observatory, meticulously mapping the stars with newly designed instruments. In another room, mathematicians would be debating new concepts, laying the foundations for algebra. Doctors would be studying the works of Galen and Hippocrates, adding their own clinical observations to create new medical encyclopedias. It was a place of intense debate, rigorous study, and groundbreaking discovery, a true engine of intellectual progress that would illuminate the world for centuries to come. The single most important ingredient in the success of the House of Wisdom was its remarkable diversity. This was not an institution that belonged to one culture or one religion. Instead, it was a vibrant crossroads where different traditions of thought met, mingled, and created something entirely new. Scholars from a vast array of backgrounds came together in Baghdad, drawn by the city's reputation for tolerance and its thirst for knowledge. They brought with them the accumulated wisdom of their own civilizations, contributing to a collective intellectual project that was truly global in its scope. This collaborative spirit was actively encouraged by the Abbasid caliphs, who understood that progress comes from the exchange of ideas. Within the hallowed halls of the Bait al-Hikmah, you would find scholars from many different faiths working side by side. Nestorian Christians, for example, played a crucial role. Many of them were fluent in Syriac and Greek, as well as Arabic, making them ideal translators of ancient scientific and philosophical texts. One of the most famous of these was Hunayn ibn Ishaq, a Christian doctor and scholar who became the most important translator of his time. He and his team translated over 100 of Galen's medical works into Arabic, establishing a rigorous method of translation that valued accuracy and clarity above all else. His work formed the very foundation of medical education in the Islamic world for centuries. Jewish scholars also made immense contributions to the intellectual life of Baghdad. The philosopher and physician Saadia Gaon, for instance, was a prominent figure in the city's academic circles, writing influential works in Arabic that bridged Jewish theology with Greek philosophy. The collaboration was not just between faiths, but also between cultures. Persian scholars brought their rich heritage of literature, statecraft, and science. They helped translate important Pahlavi, or Middle Persian texts into Arabic. Scholars from India introduced groundbreaking concepts in mathematics, including the decimal system and the revolutionary concept of zero, which would forever change the way the world calculated. This multicultural environment created a dynamic and competitive yet cooperative atmosphere. Scholars would debate each other, challenge assumptions, and check each other's work. The process of translation itself was a collaborative effort, often involving multiple scholars to ensure the highest degree of accuracy. A text might first be translated from Greek into Syriac, and then from Syriac into Arabic, with experts at each stage refining the language and clarifying complex concepts. This fusion of Greek logic, Persian wisdom, and Indian mathematics, all synthesized and advanced through the Arabic language, created a powerful new scientific tradition. The House of Wisdom proved that when people from different backgrounds come together to pursue a common goal, the results can be truly extraordinary. The foundation upon which all the discoveries of the House of Wisdom were built was the monumental translation movement. This was a massive, state-sponsored effort that spanned more than 2 centuries, dedicated to a singular, ambitious goal to translate all of the world's important knowledge into the Arabic language. The movement began in earnest under Caliph al-Ma'mun, who recognized that the great works of the ancient Greeks, Persians, and Indians held the keys to understanding the natural world. He believed that to build a new golden age of science, his scholars first had to master the wisdom of the past. This was not about simple imitation. It was about absorption, critique, and ultimately, advancement. The process was systematic and incredibly well organized. The caliphs spared no expense in acquiring manuscripts. Agents were dispatched to every corner of the known world, from the monasteries of the Byzantine Empire to the temples of India, with instructions to buy or copy any important book they could find. Legends tell of Caliph al-Ma'mun even writing to the Byzantine emperor to request permission to copy texts from the imperial libraries in Constantinople. The precious scrolls and codices were brought back to Baghdad, where they were entrusted to the skilled translators of the House of Wisdom. These scholars were not just linguists. They were often masters of the subjects they were translating, such as medicine or astronomy. The range of texts translated was breathtakingly vast. From Greek, they translated the complete philosophical works of Aristotle and Plato, the mathematical treatises of Euclid and Archimedes, the astronomical masterpiece of Ptolemy known as the Almagest, and the comprehensive medical writings of Galen and Hippocrates. From Persian, they translated literary classics, historical chronicles, and works on administration and ethics. From Sanskrit, they translated crucial texts on mathematics, astronomy, and medicine, introducing what we now call the Hindu-Arabic numerals to the wider world. The Arabic language itself evolved during this period, developing a precise new vocabulary to express complex scientific and philosophical ideas. This was not a passive act of copying. The scholars of Baghdad engaged critically with the material they were translating. They wrote commentaries, corrected errors they found in the ancient texts, and reconciled conflicting ideas from different sources. The translation of a single major work, like Ptolemy's Almagest, was a massive undertaking that could take a team of scholars years to complete. They would compare different manuscripts, debate the meaning of difficult passages, and strive to create a definitive Arabic version that was both faithful to the original and clear to a new audience. This translation movement effectively saved much of the ancient world's wisdom from being lost and made it the common property of a new, thriving civilization. The House of Wisdom was not just a place for preserving old knowledge, it was a dynamic engine for creating new knowledge. Once the great works of the past had been translated, the scholars of Baghdad began the crucial work of testing, challenging, and building upon them. They were driven by a scientific spirit that valued empirical evidence, experimentation, and observation. In every field, from the stars in the sky to the workings of the human body, they made discoveries that would fundamentally reshape our understanding of the world. This was not a simple continuation of Greek science. It was a new chapter, filled with innovation and original thought. In the field of mathematics, the impact was revolutionary. By combining the logical rigor of Greek geometry with the practical numerical system from India, scholars in Baghdad created a powerful new mathematical language. The most significant development was the birth of algebra, a discipline given its name by the Persian scholar Al-Khwarizmi. He introduced systematic methods for solving linear and quadratic equations, moving beyond the geometric proofs of the Greeks to create a more abstract and versatile tool. This new mathematics was not just a theoretical exercise, it was applied to solve practical problems in inheritance law, land surveying, and commerce, demonstrating its immense utility in daily life. Astronomy also flourished, driven by both religious needs, like determining the direction of Mecca for prayer and the timing of the holy month of Ramadan, and pure scientific curiosity. Scholars at the House of Wisdom and its associated observatories meticulously checked the astronomical tables of the Greek astronomer Ptolemy. They found that Ptolemy's data, while brilliant for its time, contained inaccuracies. So they set about creating new, more precise observations of the heavens. They built massive instruments such as sextants and quadrants to map the stars with unprecedented accuracy. They calculated the length of the year and the circumference of the Earth with remarkable precision, and some even began to question Ptolemy's geocentric model of the universe. In medicine, chemistry, and optics, the progress was equally impressive. Physicians like Al-Razi, also known as Rhazes, wrote comprehensive medical encyclopedias based on his own clinical observations, and he was the first to distinguish between smallpox and measles. In the field of optics, the physicist Ibn al-Haytham, or Al-Hazan, who worked a little later but was deeply influenced by the traditions of the House of Wisdom, conducted groundbreaking experiments on light. He was the first to prove that we see objects because light reflects off them and enters our eyes, completely overturning the ancient Greek theory of emission. His work on optics laid the foundations for the modern scientific method, emphasizing experimentation and proof over pure reasoning. The story of the House of Wisdom is ultimately the story of the remarkable individuals who worked there. These were not faceless scribes but brilliant, multifaceted geniuses who often excelled in several fields at once. They were the superstars of their age, and their names were known across the vast Islamic empire and beyond. Their personal stories reveal a deep passion for discovery and a relentless drive to push the boundaries of human knowledge. To understand the greatness of the House of Wisdom, we really have to get to know the men who brought it to life with their intellect and dedication, turning it from a simple library into a powerhouse of scientific and cultural production. One of the earliest and most influential figures was Hunayn ibn Ishaq, the Nestorian Christian translator we met earlier. His story is one of incredible dedication. As a young man, he was famously dismissed by his teacher for asking too many questions. Undeterred, he devoted himself to mastering the Greek language, traveling far and wide to collect manuscripts. He returned to Baghdad as the most skilled medical translator of his generation. He developed a strict methodology for translation, insisting on finding the best possible manuscripts and understanding the subject matter deeply before rendering it into beautiful, clear Arabic. His work was so vital that Caliph al-Ma'mun put him in charge of the entire translation effort, making him the chief physician and superintendent of the House of Wisdom. Another giant was Abu Yusuf Yaqub ibn Ishaq al-Kindi, often called the philosopher of the Arabs. Al-Kindi was a true polymath, a man whose interests seemed to know no bounds. He wrote hundreds of works on an astonishing range of subjects, including philosophy, medicine, optics, mathematics, music theory, and even perfume making. He was one of the first to work on synthesizing Greek philosophy with Islamic theology, arguing that the pursuit of philosophy, the search for truth, was compatible with religious revelation. In mathematics, he helped introduce Indian numerals to the Islamic world. In medicine, he was a pioneer in pharmacology, attempting to create a system for determining the correct dosage of drugs based on mathematical principles. Then, there were the three brothers from a wealthy family in Baghdad, known collectively as the Banu Musa brothers. Muhammad, Ahmad, and Al-Hassan were brilliant mathematicians and engineers who inherited a fortune from their father, a former highwayman who had befriended the caliph. They used their immense wealth to fund the acquisition of manuscripts and to support their own research at the House of Wisdom. They are most famous for their Book of Ingenious Devices, a beautifully illustrated work that described around 100 amazing automated machines and mechanical toys. These included self-trimming lamps, trick fountains, and even a programmable music machine, showcasing an incredible grasp of mechanics, pneumatics, and engineering principles far ahead of their time. Among the many brilliant minds who graced the halls of the House of Wisdom, one scholar stands out for his profound and lasting impact on the world: Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi. A Persian mathematician, astronomer, and geographer, al-Khwarizmi was one of the first scholars to be appointed to the new academy by Caliph al-Ma'mun. His work would not only define a new branch of mathematics, but also give us a word we use every day: algorithm. His contributions were so fundamental that they formed a bridge between the ancient world and the modern, providing tools that are still essential in science and technology today. His legacy is a testament to the innovative spirit that defined Baghdad's golden age. Al-Khwarizmi's most famous work is a book on mathematics with a long title, often shortened to, which translates roughly to, the Compendious Book on Calculation by Completion and Balancing. It is from the second word in this title, Algebra, that we get our modern word algebra. In this landmark book, Al-Khwarizmi presented the first systematic and comprehensive guide to solving linear and quadratic equations. Unlike the Greeks, who relied on geometry to solve such problems, he treated algebra as an independent discipline. He provided practical, step-by-step methods, or algorithms, that could be used to find unknown quantities in a wide variety of situations. The purpose of his book was deeply practical. He wrote in his introduction that he wanted to create a work that would be useful to people in their everyday lives, for matters of inheritance, trade, dividing land, and digging canals. He showed how his algebraic methods could be applied to solve complex inheritance problems dictated by Islamic law, demonstrating the power of this new mathematical tool. The term algebra referred to the process of moving a negative term from one side of an equation to the other and changing its sign, while al-muqabala referred to canceling out identical terms on both sides. These are the basic operations we all learn when we first study algebra in school. But al-Khwarizmi's contributions did not stop there. he wrote another hugely important book that was responsible for introducing the Hindu numeral system to the Islamic world, and from there, to Europe. This included the digits 1 through 9 and, most importantly, the concept of zero. This work, when translated into Latin centuries later, was known as Al-Khwarizmi, on the Hindu art of reckoning. His name, Latinized as algorithmi, became the origin of the word algorithm, meaning a step-by-step procedure for calculation. Without the work of Al-Khwarizmi, the development of modern science, engineering, and computer programming would be simply unimaginable. The knowledge born and nurtured in Baghdad's House of Wisdom did not remain confined to the city's walls. It spread out across the world, creating echoes that continue to resonate in our modern civilization. The decline of Baghdad's Golden Age, culminating in the devastating Mongol siege of 1258, which saw the city sacked and its libraries destroyed, was a profound tragedy. Eyewitnesses reported that the Tigris River ran black with the ink of countless books thrown into its waters. Yet the seeds of knowledge planted in Baghdad had already been carried far and wide, taking root in other lands and ensuring that the intellectual fire of the House of Wisdom would not be extinguished. One of the most important channels for this transmission of knowledge was through the Islamic lands of Al-Andalus, in modern-day Spain and Portugal. Cities like Cordoba, Seville, and Toledo became major centers of learning in their own right, building upon the foundations laid in Baghdad. It was here that European scholars, particularly after the Christian reconquest of Toledo in 1085, came into direct contact with the vast body of scientific and philosophical work that had been translated into and created in Arabic. A new translation movement began, this time from Arabic into Latin, the scholarly language of medieval Europe. This influx of knowledge would have a transformative effect. When the works of Al-Khwarizmi, Al-Razi, Ibn al-Haytham, and the translated texts of Aristotle and Euclid became available in Latin, they helped to spark the European Renaissance. Universities being established across Europe eagerly absorbed this new learning. Al-Khwarizmi's algebra provided a new tool for scientists like Galileo and Kepler. The medical encyclopedias of Al-Razi and Ibn Sina, Avicenna, became standard medical textbooks in European universities for hundreds of years. Ibn al-Haytham's revolutionary work on optics directly influenced European thinkers like Roger Bacon and Leonardo da Vinci, paving the way for the development of the scientific method. The very numbers we use every day are called Arabic numerals because they came to Europe from this civilization. The influence is visible in our language and our tools. Words like algebra, algorithm, alchemy, alcohol, alkali, and almanac all have Arabic origins. Astronomical terms like zenith, nadir, and the names of many stars such as Aldebaran and Betelgeuse remind us of the pioneering work of the astronomers of the Islamic world. The astrolabe, perfected by Islamic craftsmen and scientists, was the essential navigational tool that guided European explorers like Columbus and Vasco da Gama on their voyages of discovery. The legacy of the House of Wisdom is woven into the very fabric of modern science, mathematics, and medicine, often in ways we no longer even recognize. The story of Baghdad and its House of Wisdom is more than just a fascinating chapter in history. It holds a powerful and deeply relevant message for our world today. In an age where we often see conflict and suspicion between different cultures and religions, the Bayt al-Hikmah stands as a shining example of what can be achieved through tolerance, collaboration, and a shared respect for knowledge. It reminds us that intellectual curiosity is a universal human trait that transcends cultural and religious divides. The greatest leaps forward in human understanding often happen when diverse minds come together in a spirit of open inquiry. The Golden Age of Baghdad was fueled by an unwavering belief in the value of rational thought and empirical evidence. The caliphs and scholars of that era were not afraid to question ancient authorities or to embrace ideas from foreign cultures. They saw wisdom as a single, universal ocean, and they were eager to draw from every river that flowed into it, whether it came from Greece, Persia, India, or their own original thinking. This open-mindedness and intellectual humility, the willingness to admit what you don't know and the desire to find out, is the very essence of the scientific spirit. It is a spirit that is as vital today as it was over 1,000 years ago. The story also serves as a crucial reminder of the fragility of civilization. The destruction of Baghdad in 1258 was a catastrophic loss, a bonfire of human knowledge that set back progress in the region for centuries. It teaches us that centers of learning and culture are precious and must be protected. It also shows us that knowledge, once shared, is incredibly resilient. Even though the physical House of Wisdom was destroyed, the ideas it had nurtured had already spread across the globe, ensuring their survival. In our digital age, where information can be shared instantly around the world, we have an even greater responsibility to preserve and build upon our collective human heritage. Ultimately, the enduring lesson from Baghdad's golden age is one of hope and inspiration. It shows us that a society that invests in education, supports science, celebrates diversity, and fosters a culture of open inquiry will become a beacon for the world. The House of Wisdom was not just a building, it was an idea. It was the idea that humanity is at its best when we are united in the pursuit of knowledge, working together to better understand our universe and our place within it. As we face the complex challenges of the 21st century, from climate change to global health crises, we would do well to remember the spirit of Baghdad's House of Wisdom and the incredible power of collaboration.